A question has come in here that can help us to bring about a shift in the way we focus inner life. The person is asking, on the astral level, where there are spirits that still have human desires and attachments, if this astral level is also living through the transformations that are taking place on earth, and if on this astral level, if extraterrestrial and intraterrestrial beings are also working and serving the way they do on earth, and if the people who disincarnate here on earth can go to these intermediary levels to carry out services linked to this moment of transition. Of course, the transition of the earth includes all levels that belong to the environs of the earth. So if a planet or if a universe is undergoing transition, all its levels, all its planes are undergoing transition. And we run the risk of regarding these levels of consciousness in the same way we used to regard them before the transition began. And so the planes, the levels of consciousness of the earth before the transition represented certain states. But now, with the transition, these planes, these levels are also evolving, and everything that happens there is changing. This knowledge that was given concerning the levels of consciousness, the etheric, the astral, the mental levels, and others, this knowledge that was given to us referred to life and evolution of the souls. And so when a teacher begins to talk of the astral level, the mental level, this is an instructor of souls, because it's the soul that goes to these levels. It's the soul that has life on these levels. And in fact, Jesus, when he came, spoke about these levels in his inner meetings, not to the public, not in the gospel, but to his inner group meetings. And so Jesus explained and left a teaching that was very advanced in regard to the astral level, the mental level, these levels that refer to the evolution of the soul until the soul withdraws to its own levels. And when the teachers of past stages spoke about these levels and led the souls through these levels, they explained that on these levels there were even archangels active and serving. So they were very important levels for the evolution of humans, for the evolution of the soul, the evolution of the astral level, of the mental level. They were very important because this was the development of the soul. But when we begin to get into and to attend to the development of the monad, when we get into the evolution of the monad, then we no longer speak of levels. The monad has nothing to do with the astral level. The monad has nothing to do with the mental level. The monad is not developed on these levels. The monad is developed beyond these levels. The monad is not developed today on these intermediary levels between the earth and the spiritual, but the monad is developed on the levels that connect the planetary environs to the cosmic level. So it's another work, another level. So much so, that consciousness that was manifested as Jesus and who gave these inner teachings, at that time secret to his disciples, this same consciousness no longer gives these teachings. This Christic consciousness no longer talks about astral and mental levels today, and does not even take into account service on these levels, although service on these levels does exist, except that service on these levels is entrusted to those consciousnesses or to those beings or to those souls, more specifically, who are living on these levels. Because all advanced consciousnesses, like archangels, who are serving on these levels, are already serving on higher levels. And so today, in today's teaching, if they talk about astral level or discarnate being, or if they talk about where are the discarnate beings, all this is for people who are developing their souls, for people who are engaged in the process of the soul and have not yet begun the process of the monad. When the process of the monad begins, and this is today's teaching, we repeat and we always talk about these intermediary levels on earth because people have to make the connection, people have to accompany this, but this is not today's teaching. These things of life after death are not the teachings of today. This is for those who are still developing the soul, whose souls are still absorbed on these levels, whose souls are still under the illusion of these intermediary levels of consciousness. And so a being may disincarnate and go to the astral level, and there are beings that serve on the astral level. All this is very important. But when humanity, or when some individuals or some groups of souls begin to be aware of the monad, begin to be aware of higher levels beyond the spiritual level, then the teaching is no longer about this, because all these, let's call them hierarchies that used to work on this level, today are working on these levels through their proxies and not directly. An archangel that used to work on the astral level or who worked on the mental level, that was a work that was concerned with the evolution of the astral level of the earth, or the evolution of the astral level of the universe, or the mental level. And these hierarchies that in the time of Jesus were working for humanity, for the earth, were serving, all these hierarchies, these archangels, these entities, all this is already higher up beyond this, so that that consciousness represented by Jesus, if that consciousness spoke today as it does through Samana, if that consciousness spoke today, it will no longer speak of astral level, would no longer speak of mental level, nor speak of work to be rendered on the astral or mental level. because these are necessary services and they do exist, but they are not carried out directly by the hierarchy. They are carried out by prolongations of the hierarchies, by proxies, by beings that are serving the evolution of souls. But those who are developing the monadic consciousness, those who are in the teaching and the rhythm of today, are no longer under this influence. They are no longer under the influence of these levels, of what happens on these levels. That is why here we repeat unrelentingly that here we do not treat emotional problems, we do not treat mental problems. Here we treat emotional problems and mental problems the same way we treat illness, because here we do not work on these. Here we work on other things. Here we work on the development, the liberation of those souls that are ready to be freed from these levels. And we work on the monads' process of linking to extraterrestrial levels. And so this question, are there extraterrestrials and intraterrestrials working on the astral levels with spirits that are discarnate? Perhaps there might be, but we do not work with these things. We work with the hierarchies that today are working the energies of the cosmic signs and not the hierarchies working on the astral and mental level, these things pertaining to souls. So the work of the hierarchies today, as we know through the books we have published, is that these books are not read in depth, because if they were read in depth, no one would be talking about discarnate beings and the astral level. And so these books are not read in depth. But the answer is there, the answer to this question. And if you take the book, The Visitor, for example, you'll find there today's teaching, the teaching which the consciousness samana gives us, which the planetary centers give us, the teaching about the cosmic signs. And these cosmic signs are what come to us through the hierarchies, which in the past stages worked on the evolution of the souls. And so, for example, if we really wanted to connect to this subject of the cosmic signs, and if we wanted to connect to the evolution of the souls, or if we wanted to accompany the movement of our souls and of our monads, we could take the book The Visitor, the Esoteric Lexicon, and there we could see this. We cannot force this, nor do this artificially, but since this question came up, today we can stimulate a little this transition. But as long as we are identified with ourselves as beings who are going to the astral level, who are going to the mental level, who are going to reincarnate, who are going to be concerned about a reincarnation, as long as we are on this level, this is the level of the souls, because the soul reincarnates. The soul has hundreds of incarnations. The soul comes and goes. It comes and goes from these levels. So if we are working on this, it's all right, but we are not working on this. Even though our souls do come and go, our souls incarnate and disincarnate and go to another level and come back. This is a reality. But we are in this transition of the earth. We are already entering other laws, and in the transition of the earth, the monads or the souls can be in contact with these levels in other ways, by the law of transmutation, for example. And the monads are already being stimulated and prepared to reach these inner schools, to perceive the essence of these signs. And this is not the development of a monad here on earth. the way the development of the soul was on earth, and that Jesus and all the Christic hierarchy helped to bring about. But the hierarchy today, the Christic consciousness through Samana, through Astar, through all that in those times dealt with souls, this today is working something different with us. Today this is in another transition. We are no longer working with the development of the soul here on this planet, in the environs of this planet, giving the commandments to the soul and the rules for the soul and the laws for the soul here on this planet. The energy of today is putting this consciousness into contact with extraplanetary spheres, with stellar spheres, with the cosmic signs. And this is written in the books, so that if we paid a little more attention to what has been given to us, we would no longer have to be here talking about phantoms nor about souls. We would be here, I don't know if seeing other things, but attracting here an energy that is an energy that pertains to the transition of the earth, because the earth is going through this transition. The earth is doing this. The archangels that used to defend the souls, the archangels that used to open up the path for the souls in this web of evil forces that used to dwell and still do dwell on the intermediary levels of the earth, these archangels today are giving an impulse to our monads for them to transcend the earthly sphere and not to live on these intermediary levels of the earth. Of course, there are still many souls coping with all that has not been worked on, such as desires, attachments, and violence. The souls are still coping with this, but this is worked on within the normal service of these intermediary levels. Now, no being, no consciousness that is recognizing the transition of the earth is going to think of serving on intermediary levels, because on the intermediary levels we send our prolongations to do the work. We send the energy of proxies to work there, but the transition of the earth is a way of transcending all these levels. And these monads that are incarnating on earth today are able to link with other systems, with stellar planes, with greater hierarchies. This is the transition of the earth. There will always be souls that are still linked to these things, but to draw these things upward, to elevate these souls from these intermediary levels, to be touched by that which comes from the cosmic signs, by that which comes from these energies that are essences. They are not energies like these here, they are essences of energies, and the monads can already get in touch with them. So for us to be on this path, at a certain point, even though we recognize that we still have some link, some feeling, some thought, some state that is connected with the astral level or the mental level, we have to say, well, I'm carrying this with me the way I can take anything else, but not go on being identified with this. Because if this remains the subject of our study, if this remains the subject of our life, if these human things, these feelings, these attachments, this list of things that the teachers who worked with the soul used to enumerate, and if we continue dealing with this, we remain outside the transition of the earth, because these souls that are still developing this, these souls are already being elevated and are developing an inner magnetism that not only permits them to be attracted to more elevated things than this earth can offer, and they are also attracting beings, energies, states, consciousnesses that are on other spheres, on other levels. Here on earth, we live in a state of consciousness in which all these levels are interconnected. So we are here incarnated, but we cannot deny that there is an astral level, a mental level, nor that we function on those levels. We cannot deny this. But this is one kind of functioning, a kind of pathway, a way of life and of use of forces and energies that does not liberate us from the terrestrial level, that does not elevate us as inner beings beyond this earthly level. And the transition of the earth is a transition from this state, from this limitation of the consciousness, to other contexts and to other links. For example, during the times when the souls were worked on, and the times when the evolution of the souls only was worked on, there were the Psalms. If you were to study the Psalms, if you went back to the Psalms, you would see there an energy to help the soul become liberated from these levels, from the astral level, from the mental level, and from all the forces that chain the souls to these levels. And nowadays, we have the mantras that replace the Psalms, except that the mantras do not do the same work as the Psalms. The Psalms were an energy to free the soul from these levels. And of course, that any one of us can use the Psalms individually, can work on the Psalms individually if you need that, if you are working on this. But as a group, as work, this is not our work, this is not our instrument. Our instrument is that which does not resolve the problems of the soul on the astral and the mental level. Our instrument for work is an essence that can even be manifested as a sound, as a chant, but which is not to resolve the problems of the soul on these levels. It's not to resolve the mental or emotional problems. The mantras are for you to be attracted and to attract things from transcendent levels, from levels beyond the earthly sphere. And so it seems that certain elements in the books that have been manifested here should be taken into account so that we could become a little more attuned with the transition of the earth. And attuning with the transition of the earth, we can no longer work on things of the human astral level, nor things of the human emotional level, nor things of the human mental level, nor human mental problems, whether they are healthy or sick, but they no longer refer to the new earth. The new earth no longer works only on these levels. The new earth is being transported to other levels of consciousness. Let's see if we can strip ourselves of these human and emotional and mental and telluric aspects. Let's see if we can make a vow to empty ourselves, to strip these aspects away from us, to see if we can feel this matter a little more, if we can manage to be touched by this matter, and then be elevated from these intermediary levels. Let's see. We are still conditioned. When there is something to be created here that pertains to the plan, we are conditioned even to see proxies of the hierarchy or the hierarchy itself on the physical level, to make these things materialize. But this is the old earth, because if we leave these levels and if the monads begin to be attracted and respond to this other attraction, then what is manifested here comes through hierarchies, yes, but this comes in a much more fluid way. This comes permeating all these levels without the monads or the hierarchies, without this being a condition for things to be manifested here. And so the hierarchies evolve, the levels evolve, and the divine plan is manifested on earth, permeates everything. But if we have our consciousness activated beyond this mental level and beyond these levels, where even the discarnates seem to be there all the time and don't go beyond there, one incarnation after another. And so we have to have not only an aspiration, because we have already developed aspiration, but we have to channel this aspiration toward a transcendent life and not retain this aspiration in the best that the earthly life can offer, which is the life of the soul, which is the life of our soul, the life of our higher self here. So there is a need for our aspiration to transcend this, for our aspiration to break through this, so that the hierarchies that are taking care of the transition of the earth can work on us directly and not work on us indirectly as they have been doing, because they work on us as far as our monads and then stop. Because our conscious level, our level, this reincarnated being, is still evolving, is still being worked on, and is still coping with all that refers to the human process here on earth. And so we would have to work on the level of aspiration. We would have to work on the level of our desire to evolve in a way that is more subtle, a little more advanced, and not remain simply taking care of our development here, only taking care of our alignment with the soul, which is very necessary, and not only continue working on the process of the soul and the process of the mental and emotional level and so on, and purification, but we would have to break through this. We cannot stay here all the time. The work cannot be limited to this sphere, to this circle of issues of the soul, of the personality, of bodies that have to be aligned with the soul, of mental levels that have to be purified. All this does happen, but something in us has to move. Something in us has to say, I am not that, I am not there. And this should be something inside the soul that is already awakening to this, that is already seeing this. When these hierarchies, all this that is available today in this transition of the earth, these great consciousnesses, these archangels and all, but all this is working on our monads. All this is working on the rescue of our monads. Not in the sense that the soul was rescued, because the rescue of the soul was not to let the soul be lost, not to let the soul be involved by the forces of involution in this earthly world, on these mental and astral planes. And the work then was to save these souls. But those who are on the path today and are following the transition of the earth already have their souls saved. Their souls have already been rescued, and today the rescue of the monad is precisely to attract the monad beyond the earthly sphere. And even though it might have a service to be rendered, or some debt with this planet, and some service to be rendered here on this planet, its consciousness has to be projected beyond here. The way is open. The way is open. You have books there of beings of the hierarchy who were here, who came here to open this way for the monads, to be able to transcend this earthly sphere. But for all this to work on us, for the hierarchy Astar, both the Astar Asgran and the Astar Sheran branches, for this consciousness to work on our monads, and for us to perceive this to liberate ourselves from that which chains us to the levels on which the soul functions. So here, for us to perceive this, and to receive this, and to follow this, and accompany this, our aspiration has to transcend these levels. And really, life here has to be an opportunity for service and nothing else. And we should not be involved with life here. We should not be concerned with souls coping with all the forces of involution here. We are here to serve, but our life is not here. This is not our life. Anything that holds us back, anything that lures us here, anything that ties us down here, this has to be expelled. This has to be repelled by the consciousness of the being who understands what type of transition the earth is undergoing. So anything, whether it's on the conscious physical level, or on the emotional level, or on the mental level, anything that is involving us beyond a service to be rendered, because we are here to serve, I hope unconditionally. Here we are serving, but anything that involves us beyond this, and that refers to our identification with this here, with these levels here, this is against the current, because so much has changed, because things have changed so much, because we are already at another phase, so that this would have to be present for us to be able to accompany this mantric flow, this mantric movement, this energy represented here by the mantras. But if we are connected to these levels here, involved with these levels here, to chant mantras would be like chanting any harmonious music. Now, to really use these instruments, to really be in this attunement, and to reveal these sounds in the sense of liberating everything from these intermediary levels, in the sense of helping everything that exists on these intermediary levels, everything, people, animals, plants, minerals, elementals, devas, everything that exists, souls, everything that exists in this circle, liberate this like a true instrument of liberation, of elevation. But for us to be able to use this, as it's up to us to use in service here, for us to be able to use this, for us to be able to use these mantras in a current way and not as though we were chanting psalms or singing any kind of song, but really be using an instrument of liberation, liberation from everything that is a process that depends on so many struggles against forces of involution, struggles against demonic forces, struggles against the ordinary mind, struggles against thought forms, struggles against everything, against all the demons that are there on the astral and mental levels. And if we are here in the rhythm of transition of the earth today, the person's aspiration, the purpose, the goal of the individual cannot be here at the level of the ego, of the personality, of what happens to the person as an incarnated soul here. This has to be broken away. This has to be broken away. And these hierarchies, and this hierarchy Astar, that has this force, this builds our link with this other kind of pathway, the way of the monad, or the way of the soul that is already liberated from these levels, already liberated from this. And for us to see our lives, for example, in terms of one incarnation, and be absorbed with the play of forces, and with the facts and with destiny in a specific incarnation, this is extremely backward today. This is completely outside of the life rhythm offered to this humanity, which will have been rescued. In that book, Signs of Contact, there's a way of looking at this, which is for us to receive this hierarchical energy as a liberating energy that is helping us to transcend these earthly levels and terrestrial laws. And so there is an energy that prepares us to go a little beyond the law of reincarnation, to go a little beyond material karma, a little beyond our destiny on earth. It is like a hand that is beckoning, a hand that is reaching out to us, for us to be able to understand the work of the hierarchy with us today. What the hierarchy is doing, and there we can see that the hierarchy is dealing with our monads. The hierarchy is not dealing with our earthly life. Our earthly life, with all that it represents, even that is most noble, has to be transcended so that we can really serve the plan of evolution today. And that is why we are not affirming that there are hierarchies working on the astral and the mental levels, because the hierarchies are working on the level of the essence. They are working on the energy of the cosmic signs, which is this possibility for us as monads to be journeying through systems that lie beyond this earthly system. And perhaps this can be more concrete, be closer to us, or perhaps this can touch our etheric a little more. if we look back at the book Signs of Contact, and this will come closer to us, because these things are not said there and they could not be said there, but there is the outline, that hand held out to us for us to make this transition, for us to clear ourselves of everything that pertains to this earthly system as a force of involution, such as our karmic bonds, such as our staying within the law of reincarnation. For you to be in the law of reincarnation after the transition of the earth, this is involutionary, which today is the high point for earthly consciousness, but this is involutionary when one takes a step ahead. And so the hierarchy is not working on the astral level as it used to. The hierarchy is calling us. The hierarchy is holding out its hand to us to take us beyond these things. And our aspiration should accompany this. Because this is the service today. The service today is to liberate everything that is within the earthly law, including souls. Because it's the souls tending towards these systems that end up in human karma, including souls. To be liberated, to be uplifted, this really requires a strong aspiration on the part of the soul, a magnetism that is well developed on the part of the monad. And since we are already in the phase of the cosmic signs, all this depends on the consciousness of our soul, on the magnetism of our monad. And we, entering the cosmic signs, entering the rhythm of the cosmic signs, here, on the human level, our aspiration can attain this. Our aspiration can work on this, which is an evolution where all this is not all the same, but all this is very interconnected. And so we can, if we have the hierarchy Astar working on the monads, energies working on the souls, advanced individuals working in the planetary centers on the souls and even the bodies, if we have all this, then our human consciousness, our consciousness here, this consciousness that we have here now, this consciousness can have this level of aspiration to be connected with the Most High without knowing what it is, because all this is an essence of things. But all this can begin to be felt, can begin to be understood, because these levels are very intercommunicable. And all this is there, in the light in the sky. It's all interconnected. It's all intercommunicable. In the time of Jesus, one couldn't see an archangel. Today, you can't see an archangel because it has no form, but you can see a light in the sky, which is the consciousness there saying, look, we are here. Except don't understand here as being here on earth. This is where the mistake lies. Nobody is here because of this here and everything that happens here. Here means up there, here. We are here, up there. It's a here that is a little different because it's spoken from up there. So this is what our consciousness would now have to resolve. But it's not only to elevate life of the earth and to elevate the life of the soul here on earth with all the things we know. It's an elevation that is stellar, an extraplanetary elevation, an elevation that goes beyond the process of the souls, beyond this karmic process, beyond everything, including reincarnation, everything, beyond all this that were the laws here until today. Our aspiration today is to transcend these states, to transcend these stages, because this will also liberate the hierarchy, because when we talk of liberation here on earth, but there must be liberation in the cosmos as well. And naturally, liberation for the hierarchy is not the same thing as liberation for the souls that are here, and nor these monads that are here. But this is liberation as well. It's as though today we would have to get there without the incarnation of a Buddha here, get there without the incarnation of a Christ here, to get there without a hierarchy present here. If not, what kind of transition was this? What progress was this? What evolution was this? So in a spiritual center, coming back to our day-to-day life, in a spiritual center, these should be the parameters. That is, daily life directed toward liberating everything. 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 Soul, spirit, earth, humanity, animals, plants, minerals. Liberate everything. This should be the subject in a spiritual center today. And this level of aspiration leads us to do this, because this has to become embodied. This has to be present here. Perhaps our instrument, our ABC, our basic instrument and simplest instrument is really the book Signs of Contact. To be able to begin to perceive this thing which is reaching out to us to really draw us up. And then we ask ourselves, where am I? Where do I stand today? And then make the decision.